This episode of Kind of Funny Gamescast is brought to you by Movement Watches. Movement Watches was founded on the belief that style shouldn't break the bank. The watchmaker's goal is to change the way consumers think about fashion by offering high-quality, minimalist products at revolutionary prices. With over 500,000 watches sold to customers in over 160 countries around the world, MVMT Watches has solidified itself as the world's fastest-growing watch company. That's right, Movement Watches, MVMT. Greg Miller has had his sexy, the sexy one with the red hands, the black face, and ooh, it's looking good. Movement watches start at just $95. At a department store, you're looking at $400 to $500. They're expensive. Movement figured out that by selling online, they were able to cut out the middleman, retail markup, all that stuff, providing the best possible price. We're talking classic design, quality construction, styled minimalism. It's everything you can want. You can get yours with 15% off today with free shipping and free returns by going to mvmtwatches.com/kinda. If you like super clean designs and getting compliments, now's the time to step up your watch game. Go to mvmtwatches.com/kinda. Join the movement. Still one of my favorite catchphrases. Good job, guys. All right, speaking of RTX Sydney, you get to do something super cool, Greg.
Yeah.
Jet ski.
You didn't get to jet ski?
No, I didn't jet ski.
Not true.
Have you ever
Not
jet
true.
skied before?
No.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
He ate kangaroo?
I ate kangaroo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As did I. But you got to interview Hideo Kojima
Correct.
himself.
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't get to do that.
No, you got to talk to him a little bit.
I said hi,
yeah.
but I felt like
That's how everybody feels around him, which is always funny and weird.
He has a presence to him.
Sure.
That like you would understand. Like he is a legit celebrity.
He's got magic
yeah.
to him,
We're in this room with a bunch of like internet assholes. You know what I mean? It's us,
Present company,
Gavin Free,
Michael Jones,
Bernie Burns.
I'm mad about this.
Like all these dudes, right?
Yeah.
We're all a bunch of kids having fun, throwing boomerangs around and stuff because that's what you do in Australia,
Right.
And in our room, like our little media room that we're hanging out in,
we have a green room.
It's called the green room. Whole bunch of food, like alcohol and all this stuff. Kojima has his own little room within our room.
Right.
That is like kind of just like a tent. The Kojima tent.
How big is this tent?
It was a big tent.
It's like 2x2.
It wasn't a
No,
tent.
it's
It was
zip
like
him
just
in.
another walled off area with a little, like, the little curtain door.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Just for him and his team.
Just for him and his team. So he was in there. And that definitely helped the whole larger than life persona that he had. Like when he walked into, there was a media party that we had where it was just people that were exhibitors or people covering RTX Sydney and then us goofballs. We were there. When Kojima walked in, everyone was just kind of like,
Deep breaths, yeah.
And one of our friends came up to us and was like, "Hey, like, you guys, like, you're familiar with Kojima's games, right?" And it's like,
Yeah, we know.
we might
bit here and there.
have played a thing or two.
When he comes in, we might bring him over to you so he's somebody to talk to. We're like, he's going to be fine.
He's
talking
going to be
people,
fine. Don't worry.
This is the thing. If you dialing time back, that's Friday night, that the event you're talking about, where we're all it's in the green room, this media industry event person thing, right? Where it's like more than just the people who are doing panels or whatever. That day starts with you and me going to breakfast, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But then I meet up with Kojima, his team, the RTX Sydney team, at like 1:30, and then walk over to the convention center with them. Then proceed to hang out with them the rest of the day, rehearse our panel, walk to the theater we did our panel in, where Josh Boggs, that's what I said, right? Mm-hmm. He did his panel with Kojima the next day. We see the whole thing, get the lay of the land kind of thing, blah, blah, blah.
I wasn't allowed to go with you.
Yeah.
Which was like one of the first hints of like, oh shit, this is a really big deal.
But here's my thing. And like, that's the whole thing is everybody kept when you ran into me the first time at RTX Sydney, and I'm talking about like peers, not best friends. The first question usually was like, "Oof, man, are you nervous for this Kojima thing?" And I'm like, "No." Like, "Oh, you've talked to him a bunch, haven't you?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like, and that's the thing of, and I would people are like, "Oh, you're boys." I'm like, "Yeah, we're totally boys, right?" We're not like boys, of course.
Have you been to his place in
No.
Japan? Have you been to his
We've
hot
been
tub?
invited. That's what I'm telling you.
Let's go.
On the panel, he said, when I was asking what the fuck is Death Stranding, he said, "If I come to Japan, I can play it."
Look, why are we here?
I
Let's
know
go.
we're going. No, I'm gonna.
he didn't say play it. He said see it. It's not in a playable fashion yet.
I'm pretty sure he said I could play it.
That's not what he said.
Okay, well, I'm gonna. If we keep saying that's what he said, then that's what happens.
I don't know if
Sure,
that's
no
how
one
that
recorded
works.
that panel.
It will just. Well, it was
They'll
lost in
never know.
translation. He doesn't know. Nobody knows.
Oh,
He's not gonna go back to watch.
I wonder
this.
if we should figure out if we can upload that panel on our channel. That'd be cool.
Okay.
I'll hit him up.
Why aren't we just stealing the other panel? So why don't we steal that panel too?
I don't know. This one feels a little bit like, again, because it's Kojima, man.
back to my point.
Well, you're not stealing from Kojima. You're stealing from
I
RTX
understand
City.
the reverence more than anybody, right? Kojima, this industry icon, this guy who's, I still say, put me where I am and all these different things, right? And I dial it back all the time to the first time we took a photo together, which is at E3. We're lined up for the PlayStation conference. It's Colin and I. This is before Up at Noon, so we'll say 2013, 2012, maybe even. And for some reason, the lines are all kind of merged together where it's like, if you're going to actually go in and sit down for the conference, great, you're in this line. And if you're just a fan who's hoping to get in, you're in this line. And so it's kind of like pandemonium to an extent. Colin and I are lined up, and I look behind me, and I see Kojima and his friend back then, a translator who isn't his translator now. And I was like, I turn back to Colin, I'm like, holy fucking shit, Hideo Kojima's behind us. And Colin looks back, he's like, we got to take a picture. He's like, I never do this, but we got it. I mean, we got it, right? And I'm like, I know we got it. So I turn around and I'm like, hi, sorry, we wonder if we can get a photo. And like, you could see it's like, it's the slippery slope we know about where it's like, oof, we're in a public place right now with other people. And if we do this, it could easily turn into, now there's a huge line and we don't want to be a dick and say no to you or say yes to you and no to a million other people. But while we can see like the translation debating going on, I was able to get out an IGN business card and hand it over. And they looked at like, oh, sure, sorry, we didn't, we took the photo, everything's great, we posted it, forget all about it. Then my career takes a turn, obviously, and I start doing Up at Noon, front-facing stuff. IGN starts using me as a personality and all that jazz. And that we go to that. It was me and Caleb went to New York for the PlayStation 4 launch event where they took over that hotel, and every room had a game and a developer in it. And then this is the PlayStation 4 launch event where we were getting it and different things like that. And so I was going to interview Kojima there, and that was the first time I was actually going to sit down and interview Hideo Kojima. And so we go up to the room, and I'm still rocking this is the one where I had the vest on and the purple tie, and I interviewed Shu and did a one-on-one with him. I go up there, and we only brought 2 wireless lavs. So it was like, all right, cool, we're going to mic Hideo and mic his translator, and then Greg, you'll sit off behind camera and ask questions. And I mean, great, no problem. So we sit them down in front of the camera. I sit behind the camera, and Caleb's like, all right, everybody ready to go? And Hideo says something, and his translator goes, and turns around and he goes, Mr. Kojima would like to know why we're not getting the full Greg Miller experience. And I was like, pfft. I'm like, you've seen Up at Noon and you know what's going on. I'm like, yeah, okay, sorry, yeah, blah, blah. I start falling over myself at that point of like, yeah, no, it's just a translator in the mic and blah, blah, blah. He's like, all right, no big deal. I'm like, you gotta come on Up at Noon sometime. Never did, dick. But, no, I'm kidding around. We all know that it seems like he was on a short leash over there. So yeah, that conversation was, I'm still nervous to talk to him there. And you jump ahead to, I think my final E3 when he came through with Phantom Pain, where he came on, and that was a big deal too, where everyone's like, this, that, don't know, hush tones, get him in here, I was gonna do that. And I gave him that Peace Walker painting. And and by this point, I think he's already followed me on Twitter. So like, I think we're building this relationship of like, okay, I'm a big fan and like this, that, and the other. And I know a few people on his team and I talk to them casually every so often. And there's whatever friendship or acquaintanceship you want to call it happening.
Boys.
Yeah, exactly.
Your boys.
And then it was, when I went down to do that Metal Gear review for us here, you know what I mean? And play all that stuff. And we were doing the exclusive Let's Plays and all that jazz. In that, I think when we played it, talking to him about it, like, you know what I mean? Being able to talk to his team about it behind the scenes, sorry for the embargo, Konami, be able to sit there and talk about like what I actually thought about the game and all that stuff, where then it turned into that thing where the week afterwards, he, through people, hit me up and was like, hey, like, do you want to fly to LA and do this interview with him? And I was like, oh yeah, totally. Remember we got Anthony Cava. We're like, yeah, we'll come down and interview. We'll bring the camera. Great. We got there to do it, and that was when I was like, all right, cool, when do we get to interview him? He's like, this is people. Like, what do you mean? You're not going to interview him. You're here to be interviewed by him. And I was like, I was like, what? And like, no, he's making a video about Metal Gear Solid 5 and what it means, and he wanted to talk to you and Jeff, and he wants to interview you about what you thought of the game, what Metal Gear. I'm like, what the fuck kind of world are we living in where that's happened? And that is where I think it all fell down of like, we're fine. And like, the fact I keep going back to, you asked earlier, do I call him Hideo? I do, because like people do the whole Kojima-san and that thing. And I understand that's a sign of respect and blah, blah. For me, it doesn't feel right where I don't ever call like Phil Spencer or Mr. Spencer, you know what I mean? Or like Pete Hines, Mr. Hines when he's through. And it's not, I feel like that's just the American in me and the culture I am and all that jazz. And the fact that Hideo Kojima and his team have consumed enough of Greg Miller content that they're still like, we're all in on this. Yeah. We want to do all this stuff.
They want
with
the
him.
Greg Miller experience.
And so it's like, well, I'm gonna just be myself, because if not, first off, I don't want to be disingenuous, and number two, like, that's who I am, and he seems to like that. And so that interview where he interviewed me, and I think if you watch that video overall, it's 5.5, 7 minutes, something like that long, and we talked for 45 minutes until literally his people had to be like, Mr. Kojima, you have to stop. Like, we have other people to interview. You have to keep going. You have to do all these different things. But through translation, him being like, well, he's the first fan who's beaten it. I want to talk to him, and I value his opinion so much. And so when we got up and he hugged me, that's when I was like, all right, we're cool. Everything's fine.
We're good. We boys.
And so that was the thing of getting us together for RTX Sydney and like watching everybody else have that reaction to it. Where like, yeah, RTX Sydney people were like, we've only told Kojima's people that Greg's coming to the city. Do you mind, Tim, if you don't come? And I'm like, he's not going to care, but it's your show. Don't worry. And so that was the thing of us bumming around all day, fucking around, joking around. He kept asking me, are you all right? Because I was so sweaty because it was hot and I was walking to the interviews. Hot. We're fucking around. We're talking to each other. He's, stop and take photos in the street every 5 seconds. And then like when we went to rehearse the panel and like rehearsal was just queuing up the videos or whatever. So we're just bullshitting around making jokes on stage. And then when it was like a hurry up and wait situation, I looked over, I'm like, Hideo. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, you see that Master Sword? Let's go take a photo. And they translated. He's like, yeah. And we jumped up and ran over and took the photo with the Master Sword and all that shit. So to jump ahead to the party, he comes in and the tenor of the room changes immediately. It was everybody's like, holy fucking shit, that's Hideo Kojima. I'm in the same room with him. That's awesome. And I've been there, but I'm so far past that. You know what I mean? To where the guy comes over and is like, can you guys talk to him? Like, we'll be fine.
Yeah.
And then when it was, we looked over and I was like, I want to play a 1-2 switch or draw on 1-2 switch with a quick draw with Kojima. And you were like, if you do it, we should film it as a Let's Play. And I looked over, I'm like, all right, let him finish talking to Bernie. And he stops talking to Bernie. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go get him. And I just walked over, I'm like, Hideo, you want to go play the Switch with me? And he's like, yeah. We just walked over and did it.
It was awesome.
And that's my thing is I think with him, and this is an interesting thing because it comes up on the panel, right? Of the fact of like, who are you? And he's like, well, people don't really know me, right? Like they know my games and they have an impression of me, but they don't know who I am or whatever. I think it's totally reasonable that his people are like, can we get him a private green room? Because they don't know what they're getting into. They don't want it. But like he came out and ate the same craft services we were eating. And when one Panda Musk was with us and he's like, can you get this signed for me? I just DM'd Hideo Kojima. I'm like, hey, if you have a chance, can you come out? That panel was awesome, by the way. And he just came out. He's like, oh, hey. And he signed it and took, great. And walked back in.
Yeah.
And it was like, I feel like if that room wouldn't have been there, he would have been chill and totally fine and down to hang out.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think there is this part of it where people also are like, we know who you are, how much you matter, how much we respect you, that we don't want to, make it weird. Do you want to do this? Do you not want to do this? And that's what I think is awesome about him.
No, I mean, it's definitely a weird situation because I fanboy out over things. Like I like being excited about things. Yeah. So it's very often that is the case in my life because things have worked out well for me where I get to be in cool situations around cool people. But it's very rare that I'm like, going back to what you were talking about with you and Colin in the picture, I'm like, I do need to get a picture with Kojima. Like that has to happen. I've been in the same room with him many times. I've seen him many times. I remember at Comic-Con, I saw him, like he was crossing the street as I was crossing. The first time when I won the shit to go to my first E3, he was actually part of the whole deal. It was when Peace Walker first came out. And he came out in the room and gave everybody PSPs and Peace Walker. Wow. And it was just like a freaking huge deal. And that blew my mind. I was like, holy shit, like this is a legend,
right?
And after that all stopped. It's still weird to be in the same room because it's like I have no interaction with him at all. So like I still was like, I wanted a picture with him, but I didn't want to ask him. I wanted you to ask him. I was like, hey Greg, can you like get me a picture? Well, I mean, I made it happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like that's the thing of like, again, being an industry icon like that, there's reverence and okay, wow, I want to treat him with respect, let alone the fact that there's a language barrier. That's what makes everything so complicated, right? And the fact that I think if you were in a room with Reggie and Reggie was taking photos with people and hanging out and you were able to be like, hey man, like I'm great. And like, you can just do your normal, hey, I'm this and that and blah, blah, and like, oh cool, blah, blah. But to be like, walk up and be like, hey, turn to the translator, sit there and wait, see what it's like an awkward situation. I think people don't want to put him in that situation.
Yeah, no, and that totally makes sense. I mean, it's funny you actually bring up Reggie because I did freak the fuck out when me and Kevin saw Reggie in that elevator. Like, I haven't been like speechless for meeting somebody, or not meeting, just being in their presence. Oh, first off, very large man.
Oh yeah, Reggie's huge.
Yeah,
Reggie,
small.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Mike.
He looks like a...
Nobody cares what I have to say, Kevin.
He looks like a pro wrestler, man. But I was really intimidated. But that was a little bit different though. Like with that, I wanted to make sure that I had the right impression with him professionally.
So your choice was just to stand there and
Well,
stare.
no, I mean, to be fair, it was a very quick
It was
elevator
way
ride.
better. It was
And,
way better than my
Kevin was the one that made it awkward, but Kevin's also the one that made it good. Like, because Kevin literally, it wasn't just speechless. Because I feel like I handled
it was
not
shocking.
talking.
You
Well,
don't
I
expect to
imagine this
walk in
interaction
this
went like
elevator.
this. He walks in, that's the wide shot. Then it cuts to you and Kevin.
Kevin's got a burrito.
And then it cuts back to him, and Kevin's already hugging him.
No,
You know what I mean?
You'd imagine that
Reggie's
it
just
actually went in. Me and Kevin are like blah 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 blah, blah, like talking nonstop. The two of us just like super excited about whatever the fuck we were just talking about. And then the elevator doors open, blah, 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 and we see a Tim, and I just shut the fuck up. And Kevin goes, like the loudest gasp. And of course, Kevin
Super
has 10
professional.
fucking bags on him. I know, but like,
I
but
don't know why.
He appreciated it. You could tell he appreciated the whole
I
thing.
respect that,
But
yeah.
it was like, that was one of those moments where I couldn't think fast enough of
Sure.
like, what do I say now?
Yeah.
You know? Like, I don't know. It was a weird moment.
The
but-
next day, I got my redemption.
You
Got
did.
into the elevator with him again. I was sitting there. I was like, "Hey," and he was like, "Hey." He's like, "How's your day?" I was like, "I'm very excited." And he's like, "Good."
So
like, great.
Kev has his moment. I haven't talked to Reggie yet.
You'll get it when we bring him on this show.
Oh yes, that'd be fantastic. But no, man, being around Kojima was interesting. I do think the language barrier is what made it really complicated for me.
Sure.
Because I would have loved to be more involved with your guys' interactions, but like, I was like, this is Greg's thing. Totally letting him handle this.
Well, that was why when they initially approached us about the Kojima interview, they were like, we have Kojima and he's down to do a panel. Do you want to host it? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, and they were like, great. And we'll get other people on it. And I was like, can we not? Can we not? And I'm like, not because I don't care about their opinion. Like, I know Gus is a huge Kojima fan. He bought, the Kojima Productions pack just like I did when they released it. But it's going to be like, I can get a rhythm going, but I can't get a rhythm if it's, I'm asking a question, somebody interjects, like da 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 da. Because even like that was the thing people complimented me the most. I think after the interview when they saw it was like, great interview. It was awesome that you were still you. Because I think, and I think you watch earlier things I've done with him. Your reaction is, I don't have that much time. I'm going to give very short, concise questions. Maybe I won't follow up on things because I need to get to this point. I won't make jokes, blah, blah. Most people don't do it like I do. But you know what I mean? Like this was the one where I was like, I'm going to be me and do this thing the way I do it.
Full Greg about it, which I thought was awesome. I thought there was a very nice rhythm with the whole thing. You kept making fun of him in a fun way that like felt like you're in on the whole thing. You treated him the way that everyone thinks about Kojima, which I thought was really good, and he appreciated too.
Yeah.
And I thought that his
that's the thing is he's a normal guy, and but the language barrier and then the respect factor I think always puts him in this place where people are like, how do I talk to you? What do I do with you?
Yeah, I loved you like asking him. You're just like, so you can't tell us anything about Death Stranding. What are we talking about? Like, we're not talking about the other stuff. We're not talking about Death Stranding. Like, what is this game? What is happening? And like, I feel like you did get a lot out of him. For the fact that he can't say anything.
Sure. Well, I mean, the big question has been with this game is where is it in its production cycle and what's going on with it? I think it was nice to hear him talk about that and the fact of, again, no hard anything, right? But the fact of, we know what the game is. We have a framework for how the game plays, and now we're laying all that on top of it, and systems. And when he says systems, I'm thinking the way AI interacts and all these different things. My takeaway from it, right, of sitting there and talking for Death Stranding for we did like 45 minutes on this game, right? What I find very interesting is the way he talks about that it's all about connections. And it's going to be about that when you play the final game too. Yes, there's there's shooting or whatever he said. There's action elements to it. There's action to it. But he was saying that 2 hours into it, you're gonna start to see that there's more to this than what you thought there was.
Yeah,
and that is fascinating because he talks about in search of new technology, the best tech around. I really wonder if this game is going to have some kind of weird meta thing to it, where I don't know if it's. You start it and you link your Twitter, your Facebook, or it's that drastic, and then somehow it's playing with shit like that and making references to like your high school, your hometown, or something weird like that. Or if it's put in where you live and it's like the weather is the same kind of shit. But I feel like that's the kind of connection it's going to be, and connecting to your friends list and drawing them in as his enemies. And
I agree. I mean, the way he was talking about the connection things and like the ropes being metaphors and like a whole bunch of stuff, I was like, all right, this is the most Kojima thing ever. But I loved how he was talking. He's like, is this going to be an open world game? And he's like, well, once you make an open world game, you can't go back.
Yeah, you can't go
like
back.
that is just. That's how you think of things. So this will be open world.
Yeah.
Something else I thought was my favorite thing that he said. He was just like, yeah, like if you see the two trailers, you brought up the thing where if you play the trailers at the same time, it looks like the baby goes from one
Yeah,
trailer to the other. He's like, is that, intentional? And he straight up said yes.
Yeah.
And
According to him, if you can decipher from the trailers what the game is, and nobody's done it yet.
He was saying that there's a lot of hidden shit in the trailers that people still haven't found.
Yeah.
And he was going through all that. And when you were like, yeah, so when's the game coming out or whatever? And he was just like, the game's already begun. I was like, that's fucking awesome. That kind of feeds into the whole meta-ness of the whole thing of what could this game be? And is it more than just the game? And is that a cop-out? Sure. Can anyone pull that off more than Kojima? No. Could he pull it off? Yes.
And that's the thing, like he was talking about in the interview, the fact that where I was like, well, you're making all these appearances, you keep dropping these trailers, like what's going on? And he was talking about the fact that I think it is to his point that this isn't teasing the game, it's part of the game to him, which I think when you look back at Metal Gear Solid 5 is what he was probably trying to do before Konami really closed everything off. And the fact of like the Moby Dick Studios and the bandaged face and all this like weird meta crazy ass shit that then leads into what this would be eventually. And I think that's what you're seeing now.
Yeah. And something we were talking about this off camera and off panel a little bit, but I think that a lot of people are hung up on like, why is he showing so much so early? And like this game is so far out. Like what's the point of all this? I think that he needs to put this stuff out there because now with Kojima Productions being a brand new Kojima Productions, like when you think of Kojima Productions now, you see the new logo.
Yeah.
They're doing something right,
sure.
And I think that they put out enough with Death Stranding, whether it's Mads Mikkelsen or
Norman Reedus.
Guillermo del Toro or Norman Reedus or the two trailers and the babies and how this all, like there's enough iconography that's being put out there that we can have enough to discuss that's not Metal Gear. And I think that it's so hard to talk about Kojima without bringing up Metal Gear and about having those discussions, whether it's Metal Gear Solid 5 and its lack of an ending or what the fuck happened with Konami or whatever, or the legacy of the franchise and like how it's going to, form his new, the shape of his new studio and stuff. I think that it's important and that they did an amazing job. And I didn't really realize it until we're here, where it's only been less than a year since they've announced Kojima.
Yeah, a little more than a year.
Yeah,
now, right?
you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Is it more than a year
Right,
at this
yeah,
point?
because remember what it was going to be? It was last PSX where it was like we had the awkward ending where they ended on Paragon and everybody's like, well, I guess not last PSX now, two PSXs
ago. Yeah.
So it would have been, they made the announcement in December 2015.
But they didn't announce anything at the PSX.
No, that's what I'm saying. Remember, is that he couldn't come to the Game Awards. PSX ended awkwardly, and then like the next week they put out that
Was the
video
next
with
week? It was him and Andrew
Andy
House.
Yeah.
Andy?
Yeah, I call him Andy.
So
What are you gonna
Hideo,
do?
you got
Come to my
Andy.
show and argue me about it, Andy.
You're so cool.
Anyways,
I like that, they did that trailer or they did that video and it's like, okay, cool, PlayStation, we're partnering with them. Here's what we know what we're doing. Then we get the logo for Kojima Productions. Then we get my timeline might be wrong on this, but there's the intro video for the dude on the moon and the whale and all that shit. Then there's Death Stranding trailer at E3, then Death Stranding trailer at PSX. You hear it's going to be on Guerrilla Games engine, and like there's just like so much shit coming out where it's like, man, there is a lot to talk about this game and a lot to dissect about this game. For a game that is not out and is not going to be out for a long time, there is a mythology and world to Death Stranding that almost any other game would kill for.
Sure.
So, good job, Kojima.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts, Nick?
He's awesome. I'm jealous of your relationship with him, and I can't wait to play the next game.
Okay, good.
Are you excited for Death Stranding?
Yeah, I am. I'm
Okay.
actually like, I've never played a Metal Gear game except for the last one, which was Phantom Pain. I jumped right into that, clearly not knowing anything about it. It was a super enjoyable experience. Very stylized. I loved it. I didn't think I was going to like it as much as I did. I got into it. So yeah, I'm in. I'm all in. And if he comes here, we'll throw him a party.
Gotcha.
I'm just throwing that out there. We'll put a hot tub in the back, throw him a hot tub party.
Fucking joke around.
An end note to it that
talking
I
about hot
thought
tubs.
was interesting, right, was the fact that, you mentioned it, right? Like, he never said Konami, said he went to work at a game company. I mean, legitimately, I think the only time I've had my heart broken in an interview, and probably because I'm such a fan / acquaintance of him, is when I asked about Metal Gear initially, and he's like, I don't want to talk about Metal Gear. And I was like, and it wasn't like, oh my God, I've offended him. It was, oh my God, the wound is still, it's as bad as we all think it is. You know what I mean? And then I was like, really? Like, what do you want to do? And he was like, I'll talk about Metal Gear. I was like, all right, go. But I stayed top level on it. And I'm not getting into it. And I think we're all pretty well aware he cannot talk about Konami, right? So when he was like, Norman Reedus and Guillermo del Toro helped me get through a horrible time in my life, I wasn't like, and what was that?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Like, I know you, but in the same way of,
How does he know them?
He can't. I'll tell you about it in a second. He can't talk about it, right? Clearly, there must be a contract or something to that extent.
Non-disclosure agreement.
What I thought was really interesting when we were talking about, what do people get wrong about you, or how do you describe? No, how do you describe yourself? What do people not know about you, or whatever? He was very clear of like that people think that I don't hit deadlines, and I hit my deadlines. My games are not late, which I thought was it didn't get picked up. It didn't get a crowd chant. It didn't get anything. It was very much though a pointed. No, because Konami was very the hullabaloo out of there was that the deadlines kept pushing back and they were super late and and it was like a very. It's not how I feel about it, and that's not, you know what I mean? Like, but he didn't address it that way. He didn't put it into that part of the conversation. That's what I took away from it. How does he know all these people? Him and Guillermo del Toro have been friends for years, it turns out. Guillermo del Toro is a big video game fan, so they just got hooked up that way. And then one day, he's at dinner with Guillermo del Toro, and he's like, yeah, I'm working on this new game or whatever, and I think I want to put Norman Reedus in it. And Guillermo del Toro is literally like, oh, okay. Norman. Hideo Kojima wants to put you in his game, and Norman Reedus wrote back, cool.
Fuck yeah, I did. Fuck yeah, I did. Fuck yeah, Daryl did.
Awesome.
Oh my god,
So
that's awesome.
the day after he did the panel with us, Kojima went to dinner with George Miller.
Fuck, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Now
you forget that he's on like that level of creators, man. It's so cool.
And that's what was awesome about him talking.
you guys don't forget
His
that.
whole thing was like, from when we got out of Death Stranding, we're talking in the interview about where it all comes from him, how he, why he got into this. It was that he wanted to make movies, but he knew he couldn't do that in Japan. So he started looking into games that way, and that's where it all goes off. Just so to see it come back like that's right.
Have people asked him about making movies? Because obviously all of his work is so cinematic. Like,
I think it's that thing. He knows he's found his calling here, and this is what it's about.
I don't know, man.
I don't know. I wouldn't put it past him, but I mean, he talked about it. Like when he went through the dark time of like, do I keep making games? Do I retire? Do I take time off? Do I want to go into something like movies or whatever? And games are like Guillermo del Toro is like, you need to keep making games.
I don't know. I mean, that's the thing for him. Like, yeah, obviously he's an amazing, one of the best game designers, if not the best game designer on the planet. But I think that would translate over. I think he could make something very special in cinema because the way his brain works is different.
Sure.
And that's what's so cool about it. It's like when you play one of his games, you're like, this is not supposed to work the way this works. And I'm not supposed to like this as much as I like it. It's not a traditional path from point A to B. There's a Z thrown in there somewhere and you just kind of get over there first, come back. So I don't know. The guy's super creative and super outside of the box thinking.
Final point, and this is just a hanging chad that I don't know the answer to. I don't know if you know the answer to this at all. I felt like Bernie and Hideo met at RTX Sydney, and then they both went to New Zealand together.
That's what it seems like.
I haven't drawn that together to figure that out, but it seems like at some point Bernie's like, I'm going to New Zealand and I'm going to go to Weta Workshop, and Kojima's like, I'll come.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's how it looks on social media.
That is what it looks like.
Because like when we were talking to Ashley and Bernie about it, of like,
they didn't mention
we're
it.
going to New Zealand. They were never like, hey, we're bringing Hideo Kojima.
I want to get to that point in my life, like that place in my life where I'm that big, where I could just decide to go to Weta.
Yeah.
And be like, and everyone's gonna be like, yeah, of course they're gonna let him in.
Let him
of
in.
course, it's Hideo Kojima. It's Nick Scarpino. He made Hobbits 4.
They'll be like, it's Nick Scarpino. He's got a gun.
While
shit.
you're old bitches.